Thank you. So, have you ever heard of drunk history? It's when people get drunk and they just, like, recite history. The other day, I'm not super religious, keep in mind. Thank you. I'm not super religious, but I tried to explain Passover, basically, or the story to Passover to somebody with my, Invisalign or lisp. And after I was done, she's like, I'm not even religious, and I'm actually interested in that. They're like, I hated sitting through church, but you made it interesting. So I'm going to recite that because Passover's coming up. Here's an obviously not religious summary of Passover for those who don't know, okay? There's this time in ancient Egypt, BC, and there are these group of people called the Jews. And so the Pharaoh is like, I don't like this. They're not worshiping me and the gods that we have. And now ancient Egypt actually is really, really cool, but they're not worshiping our gods. So they're all like, kill all the Jewish sons. Kill them all.
Death to all of them.
Oh. Jewish kids, the latest Jewish kids. And so obviously, this family is like, I don't want this to happen to our kids. So they put the little baby Moses in a basket and put him in the Nile River. And it's like, well, better that, he has a better odd of surviving this little basket than being forcibly drowned. So anyway, his sister Miriam is like, no one's touching my little bro, and she follows him, and it ends up boop in the backyard of the queen. It ends up in the backyard of the queen, and the queen is telling her, like, servant, hey yo, get me that basket, and this woman's like, get your own fucking basket. Anyway, so surprise, there's a baby inside. That is how babies are made. They come from the river. And she's like, the God is supposed to bless me with him. And Miriam's like, oh, hey, I see you found a baby. Do you need a babysitter? My family is, nurses and all that. And they're like, yeah, sure. So, Moses does not know that, Miriam's his sister. He grows up and he's adopted and raised side by side with the Pharaoh's kid who's supposed to inherit the throne. Jewish people are getting treated like shit in ancient Egypt. They're being enslaved. They're being forced to do the pyramids, all that stuff. So, time passes, Moses is now an young adult, and eventually he sees a guard mistreating a Jew, and he's like, you know what, that's not cool, and they get in a tussle. The guard takes out a knife for whatever reason, because, when I get in a fight with the frickin' Pharaoh's, adopted kid, my first thought is, let me fucking stab him. Yeah, it was on sight. So, they kind of tussle, and Moses accidentally gets this guy stabbed. He dies. And as he's like, shit, this guy nearby is like, hey, I'm actually your brother. It was his brother. And his bro was like, so you're actually Jewish, and your mom put you in the Nile as a baby. And he's like, damn, I had dreams something like that happened. That was real? And he's like, yeah, fam, that was not a trip. That was real. So, anyway, they exile him, or the pharaohs exile him to the desert for killing a guard, and as he's wandering with his little donkey, being heckled by these dudes who are like, we should get water before you because we're men. And he's like, hey, yo, queen, this guy bothering you? And, thank you for following. And he scares them off. He ends up getting married to this woman, having kids, and they're farmers. And one day, his sheep runs up this big, big, hot mountain, and he's all like, wait, come back. And then he sees something, and he's like, what's that? And there's a bush that's on fire, but the plant part of the bush isn't dead. It's just like as if a flame is just kind of engulfing it. And he's like, This, being reaches to him, and he's like, hey, what's up? I'm God. And he's like, what? Are you sure? And God's like, yeah. So here's the thing. You know these pharaohs, and you're Jewish. You should go back to them and be like, hey, you should stop enslaving these people and let us have our own land or whatever. And he's like, no. And God's like, yes, I'm God. Do what I say. So Moses is like, all right. And he goes to Pharaoh. And now the younger Pharaoh, the guy he grew up with, has replaced the older Pharaoh. I think he's dead at this point. I hope so. Anyway, thank you for following. So he is all like, hey, man, you should let my people go. And the guy's like, no. And he's like, watch this. And to give him a warning, his, staff turns into a snake. And he's like, my, magicians can do that shit too. And they turn their staffs into snakes, but then Moses' snake, this Invisalign's making me have a big old lisp. Snake eats the rest of them, and he's like, fuck you, bitch. Nothing like a Bible story with the word fuck in it. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, this guy is like, you need to let my people go or else God will unleash stuff. And the guy's like, no. And then if you watch Prince of Egypt, there's a really cool song called The Plagues, and it's totally metal, and it's like, I sent the pestilence and plague into your house, into your bed, yeah, that whole thing. Anyway, and so he unleashes a bunch of plagues. There's a bunch of frogs, although we're not 100% sure if it's one giant frog or a bunch of frogs, or he hit a giant frog and they broke out into a bunch of frogs. And then there's, like, flies, and their cattle dies, and there's famine, there's, like, disease. The first thing that happens is he turns an island to blood. Anyway, so he unleashes all these plagues, and the Pharaoh is still like, F you, your people are going to be slaves. And he's like, all right, last warning, man, this next one's going to be really bad, and I don't even have control over it. It's God's doing this thing. I'm just a prophet. He's the guy who can speak to God. He's like, you need to stop. Some bad things are going to happen. And the Pharaoh's like, that sounds like a you problem, brother. So he tells all the people, and this is where Passover comes in. Yeah, this is where Passover comes in. Everyone who's Jewish, paint your door, cover your door, paint your door, or, like, right above your door red. The angel of death is gonna come over. What's up, Jess? The angel of death is gonna come over tonight, and he's gonna kill every firstborn Egyptian in the house. So if you're Jewish, paint your thing red, and the angel of death will just pass over you. Here, Passover, we basically celebrate us not dying from the angel of death. And to summarize what happened afterwards, so the angel of death comes and kills the firstborn son of every person who didn't have lamb's blood on their door, including the Pharaoh's kid. You know what? This guy is just so distraught and so grief-stricken over his son's death that he's like, fuck it, take your people and get out of my sight. I don't want to deal with you anymore. And he's like, sorry, brother. And he's like, you're not my brother. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Please leave me alone. Leave me alone. Please leave me alone. Anyway, so Moses and he pits his staff and he opens up the Red Sea and the Jews leave. And then eventually the guy sends his army after him. And then they close the sea after, and the army drowns. And then they, like, walk the desert for 40 years. And that was Hebrew stories with Izzy. You won't get a lot of them, as I've said. I'm not religious, but,